Welcome to Silicon Valley Asian Business Talk.
Hello, everyone. This is Roger Chen from University of San Francisco, and we are conducting this interview sponsored by University of San Francisco Center for Asia Pacific Studies, short for CAPS. And our guest today is Lee Fang, and we want to thank you, Lee, for kind of joining our program to share your wisdom, your insights on adopting the enterprise AI system in your company. Please briefly introduce yourself and also your company.
Great. Thank you, Roger. Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Fan. I'm currently Chief Technology and AI Officer for Circle Internet Group. For those who don't know, Circle is a global financial technology company building economic operating systems for the internet. We're creating a neutral programmable layer for digital dollars and enable money to move with the same speed, transparency, and security as the information and data to do today. Now, in my role as a technology officer, I manage all the engineers, data scientists, and the tech ops in the company and build the product and the services. My another role as an AI officer, I set up the company's AI strategy, and I also lead a small AI team to execute and enable everyone in the company, whether tech or non-tech.
Thank you. Actually, that's such a great background, and we are really looking forward to kind of discuss your experience.
Discussion topic: Managing bottom-up AI request and AI performance evaluation. Silicon Valley Asian Business Talk.
And also, if I understand you correctly, I think at one point you talked about asking the functional area or even individual employees to fill in some kind of form if they are interested in trying something new. But could you kind of elaborate on this kind of forms? Because I think that's an interesting part is, what do you ask these employee or functional department to share the information? In other words, what do you consider when they submit their applications, and what's the criteria for you to say yes or no to let these functional areas try? I think that's an interesting question to understand your form kind of a methodology.
Yes. Yeah, so I have to say that form was like the first version of the form was designed maybe more than a year ago, and things have changed. But the essence is the same. First of all, we want to understand why. Why meaning like what's the benefit, right?
Maybe Lee, actually, before you continue, let me kind of help the audience to understand the context of the story. Basically, well, maybe you can tell us why you even have to think about the form approach, then continue talking about what you include in the form, so people kind of have this kind of a context understanding.
Totally. So when we started the AI journey, as I said, bottom up, there's a lot of interest of learning and trying out AIs. And then we have a employee self-organized Slack group or mailing group, and like more than half of the employees in the company sign up that Slack, and people constantly talking about say, hey, my sister tried this tool, it's really good. Or some vendor suggest me using their new AI feature, it looks good, can we enable? Because happen to be I also manage the IT group, and we have a pretty tight control. And if we are not approved by IT or security, they cannot even utilize in the corporate environment. So we constantly have those messages in the Slack group. Initially, I assigned someone monitor, but we quickly realized it's a lot of time consuming, and sometimes it's really hard to capture everyone's request. So I decided to say, let's have a AI request intake form. We the form was designed together with IT and a security team, and also the AI engineer team. And at first, I would say, let's understand why. And it cannot be say, I just heard from my sister, it looks cool. That's not gonna work. We has to have a business need. Because I always say, if you're curious, great, but you always have your own personal laptop to play with. Don't do it in the work environment. But if there's a business need, for example, marketing team say, hey, this is a new tool that will generate the creative or the assets much, much faster so that we can iterate. Sounds like a great business need, right? So now, then we will ask how many people in your function will need that. right? And also have you do a preliminary checking and where, like, who is the vendor and whether they, how much do you charge? Are you sure you have the budget? Because I don't control everyone's budget. Your marketing head have to approve, say, okay, we have the budget. But I have to say, in most cases, budget is not a concern. It's more, okay. Then the real question is, with this tool, do you foresee what kind of data this tool need to put in, right? So input the data, right? The security they need to review, are those data sensitive, any customer data or privacy data? So this one thing. And output, okay, do you plan to use this output from this AI tool for production, or you just want to experiment and learn something? That makes a difference. If you say, I'm going to use the output directly launch on circle.com or whatever, that's a much higher bar. We will have to make sure, say, because we all know the AI is not perfect. So all those considerations you fill in the form, then we will have a quick review. First, approve whether you can do a pilot. Most of the time, people will say, I want to learn to then decide whether go in production. Then the key thing is whether the data is sensitive or the control is there. So things like that. But if eventually say this is a tool we can launch in production, that will be a much, frankly speaking, lengthy process to review. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's great. Actually, that's a very interesting story. So I like this kind of a hybrid approach. You let the bottom-up initiative, but you have some kind of a control, right? And also very systematic evaluation. So now let's kind of switch to a different question. Could you kind of talk about how do you, or maybe does your company or different function area monitor the progress, and what is the metrics you use? Because these days, as we all know, kind of evaluation of the AI system to make the system improve is a huge task. So how does your company deal with those kind of evaluation, monitoring, those kind of things?
Yeah, so as I explained earlier, we have a centralized AI engineer team, and they help each functions once they decided, they sit down with each functions and help them to build up their workflow. And then mostly importantly, help them to understand how to evaluate them. And internally, we use Smith as the framework, and they set up the evaluation framework. And I think for specific functions, let's say customer service or onboarding and for compliance, it's the hardest part is decide how to evaluate that. And I just recently reviewed one slide. People talk about the golden data is the ceiling. If you cannot have a clear, precise, good evaluation data, it's very hard for the project to be successful, because ultimately you have to have a consistent and clear measurement so that people will feel confident. So that's one thing. And also operationally, as I said, we have a operation team, and frankly speaking, just one or two people really collect all the status and understand where the bottleneck is. And because we have a few functions lag behind, like later last year, and we recognize that they struggle with the data integration. When the functions, let's say, finance or talent, they work with Workday, they work with Oracle, and the team will have to understand how to integrate with those vendors, their API to pulling the data. Otherwise, their AI workflow cannot do anything. So pulling all those data, they need technical support. So with that recognition, one of the high priority project our H1 2026 will do is build a unified data fabric across the company to make sure all the important data sources can be integrated, so that the AI developer for each function have an easier time to pull in their data.
Thank you. Actually, I will kind of love to kind of discuss a little bit later, because the interoperability of the different systems. But I think one interesting point talking about some functional area, they struggled of the evaluation because they don't have the high quality or consistent measure. Could you elaborate this? Because I think many other companies may eventually run into the same problem, or maybe they have not even, kind of understand this might be a problem because they are so early. So could you elaborate? What do you mean? Good evaluation requires consistent, good measures. Give us some examples to help people better understand this very important issue in the building or monitoring AI system.
Totally. For example, when let's say customer support, right? Initially, the idea is like, wow, every customer email, because we have thousands of them, every customer email, the AI will be smart enough to reply automatically. And by the way, the magic of AI is we also are a global company. And in the past, in order to reply in, let's say, Italian or Spanish, it's really hard. We have to find vendors to translate for us. Now AI is great. Now, however, this is ideal. Now, we all recognize AI is not going to be perfect. So when we first have a prototype, yeah, mostly looks good, but from time to time, actually, often you will say, oh, it's not a good one. Now, then an engineer realized that we haven't defined what is a good, right? And we cannot really say, okay, because it's not good enough and the project is continued. So initially you say, okay, let's find a better model, or let's tune the model, or let's feed in more context. But you soon realize you cannot keep going because you haven't really defined what is the passing threshold. So then engineer and a PM work with the function leader, say, okay, so how are we going to say when we will feel confident this will be an AI agent running? So then we actually shrink the scope, say, we cannot rely on AI to reply all the email, but at least AI can be confidently say, this is a spam email, or this is a what do we call it? A one-touch email. The question is so simple, we can really have a very standard email reply. So there are actually 60% of email, either like I think it's a 40% spam, and then another 20% is a one simple question. We can have a very standard answer and the customer will be happy. And then the remaining, you will still have AI help you to draft, but a customer support representative will still review and make sure this is the right thing. So you have to go deeper, say, how do you have this like if else choice options? Some of the part like AI can be extremely smart and precise. Some like AI will give you help, but you will continue to make a decision. So once you have that, and then we can decide to say for spam, what is the threshold? Maybe I actually don't know the exact number, but maybe it's 95% or 99% precision, then we will pass. Things like that. So for each of the, like you basically have to go one or two layers deeper, then you recognize where they stuck.
That's great. So in other words, actually, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You have to be more precise on the definition of a good, bad. So that's, so you can track the progress, right?
Yes.
And I think that's fascinating.
Thank you for watching.